Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We've got so much to get to today, but I wanted to open the show. I encountered something yesterday, and you guys know that I am a faithful woman. I love Jesus, and I encountered something that I have never encountered before in my life. Where a couple of strangers, right, two Walmart employees, I had to go pick up some groceries, and two Walmart employees, they were discussing God and his existence. So the male employee, he had to be been like, I don't know, 19 years old. He was struggling a bit with explaining why, say, a child gets cancer. And if a child gets cancer and there's this much pain and suffering, how could God exist? How could God exist if he allows this? And, he's 19 years old. He's kind of struggling answering this question. So I chime in. I'm doing the self checkout thing. And I chime in and I told him, hey, Jesus is Lord. And gave him a little bit of confirmation and helped him out a bit. And he looked physically relieved. He was having a discussion with an older woman, probably 40s, 50s, approaching 50. And he was having a tough time coming up with the words. He looked physically relieved when I said to him, hey, Jesus is Lord. And I was telling him a little bit about my faith. And then I kind of, saw his shoulders drop. He looked physically relieved that I came in and jumped in and told him and just gave him a little bit of confirmation. I didn't tell him what to say to the woman. And then right after that, he points up, he says, yep, you're right, he's coming back. And then he continues his conversation with the woman, and I hear him talk about how, the original sin causes us to live in an imperfect world. And yeah, there's something happening out there. I've never encountered that, where you just have a couple of coworkers really just talking to Walmart employees, talking about Jesus, talking about God. So there's something going on out there, and I'm really excited. And, I said this on a social media post. You guys can go check it out, Conservative Cat. I said, revival is coming and the churches need to be ready. There's something going on outside, and where do people go when they need hope? That's definitely the church, and the churches need to be ready. So I just figured I'd share that with you a little bit here this morning. I usually start out the show with a bunch of news headlines, but I wanted to slow it down a bit and tell you about, hey, here's what's going on outside church walls and what I encountered yesterday. So voters, they need to have confidence in their system. Okay, in the election system. They don't have confidence in their election system. And, things are going on in Pennsylvania. There were some people who were posing as election judges, which is probably pretty easy to do. I don't know if Pennsylvania has a similar law where you've got, here in Illinois anyway, I know that the election workers or the election judges, they don't have to provide their name to the voters. I mean, how ridiculous is that? And of course, it's under the guise of security. We have to keep them safe or whatever, as if, people are out there beating up election workers, right? Which it just doesn't happen. You're going to get that on your ballot. If you haven't voted already, I voted early. You're going to get this question where, should we go after candidates civilly if they intimidate an election worker or a poll watcher or something like that? That's a question, of course. It was passed with this election omnibus bill. I've told you multiple times about this omnibus bill. It was passed very, very quickly. They gutted a bill in the legislature. I think it was a House bill. They gutted it, replaced it with all kinds of new election law. They tried to get it to where slated candidates wouldn't be a thing anymore in Illinois, where they banned slated candidates in the middle of an election process where we already have slated candidates gathering petitions, gathering signatures to get themselves on the ballot. And they passed this law outlawing slated candidates. Now, the Illinois Supreme Court said, you can't do that. But also in this election omnibus bill, in Illinois, they passed 3 referenda. It's non-binding referenda. So, this is This is their this is the Democrats and kind of their referenda that they had pushed through last minute, and part of that bill was actually deemed unconstitutional by the Illinois Supreme Court. So there you have it. If you want my opinion, vote no on all of it. Vote no on all of it. Candidates, if you go after an election worker, there's laws. If you just can't intimidate people. You can't threaten people. There's already laws that criminally go after you. What this is if a candidate raises an issue or wants a recount, an election worker can now, if they pass this law, right? And if they wind up, getting this non-binding referendum passed, then they can craft up a law that, goes after candidates civilly. Say a candidate wants a recount. Okay, that's that could be seen as intimidation to this election worker or to the election judge, and then they can come back and sue you into oblivion. Voters have no confidence in this system. The fact that I can't even have the name of my election judge, like if I ask them their name and they won't even give it to me, how the hell am I supposed to trust you with my ballot? Okay, I don't even know your first name. So this is a system that constantly fails nationwide. We're seeing people pose as election workers and as election judges, and that's easy to do if you don't have to, if there's no obligation to have your name displayed on a badge. There's no chain of custody there. Like, you can, a stranger can walk in and have a badge with a letter on it, and that's what's going on in Pennsylvania. You had all kinds of people posing as election judges collecting people's ballots. Okay, that's what's going on there. So the people who make the mistakes, the people who pass these outrageous laws, like you can't ask for the name of your election judge at your local precinct or at your local polling place. You can't ask for the name of the judge. When people pass laws like that, that's what causes a lack of confidence, okay? It's their fault for passing these stupid laws. It's their fault for making mistake after mistake after mistake. You are in an abusive relationship with your government. If your boyfriend cheats on you, ladies, if your boyfriend cheats on you and then he blames you for checking his phone, it's not you, it's him. Maybe the government shouldn't pass these outrageous laws like, oh, you can't ask for the name of your election judge. Maybe the government shouldn't be passing those laws. Maybe they shouldn't be making the mistakes that result in your ballot being sent to the wrong county. Okay, mail-in ballot, a wrong return address. Maybe the vote machines, maybe we should have more of them just in case they malfunction. Maybe we should have a technician on site to fix it right away. There's all kinds of things that the government can do to provide you that confidence. But when they constantly make mistakes or they pass laws that make no sense and that sound like it's designed to ruin the confidence of the voter. I mean, the fact that you expect me to hand my ballot to somebody and I don't know their name, yeah, that's what you want me to do. Seriously, you're in an abusive relationship. They're going to say it's your fault. It's your fault you have no confidence. You're a conspiracy theorist. You are election denier. You're a bad actor. They're going to call you these things. No. You're in an abusive relationship with your government. They're going to tell you it's your fault. It's their fault as to the reason why you have no confidence in this system. They've baked it into the cake with the laws, and that when they execute their own laws that they pass, they can't even do it right. All right, so I want to talk about a few things. Kamala Harris, she brought out a bunch of doctors to promote abortion, of course. These doctors look frantic and confused when there's a medical emergency in the crowd. Okay, it's like 10 feet away from them, and none of the doctors in these lab coats that she brought up there to talk about abortion went to aid the person having a medical emergency. That just goes to show you abortion doctors, it's an oxymoron. they're not actually doctors, because the whole premise of a doctor is to, I don't know, do no harm, and and these doctors, abortion doctors, intentionally end lives. So it's an oxymoron, an abortion doctor. These people aren't doctors. They were obviously there as actors, and clearly, because they didn't even bother to help somebody having a medical emergency. So I'm going to be chatting about that. JD Vance, he says Republicans are missing something when they talk about abortion. This is not people who are, enthusiastic about having abortion. A lot of people aren't enthusiastic about having abortion. Sometimes they feel like it's their only option available. And Republicans just have to do a better job at talking about abortion and discussing the issue. So I really like what JD Vance says here. It's during a town hall, a News Nation town hall with Chris Cuomo. He was hosting it. So we're going to get to that. Plus, a disabled veteran makes a powerful case to go out and vote. She doesn't do it vote by mail, folks. She actually goes out. She's a disabled veteran. And she goes out and she votes early. Now, I'm not saying, the Jimmy Carters out there in the world should be voting. If you are not able to vote, like actually mentally there or physically there to the point where you are unable to vote, yeah, of course, those people shouldn't go vote. But this woman, she made it out to vote. She's a disabled veteran, and she makes a powerful case to go vote out in person. Who would have thunk, even a disabled person, a disabled veteran here, she was able to go out and vote in person early. And, she makes a powerful case to go do that and not vote by mail. So we're going to get to all of that here on Conservative Cat. Go ahead and text me 309-451-9299. Like I said, the fact that abortion doctors call themselves doctors is an oxymoron. Kind of doesn't make any sense, because abortion doctors, they're intentionally ending life. Doctors are supposed to save lives. Nonetheless, this is probably why Kamala's abortion doctors look dumbfounded when someone 10 feet away from them had a medical emergency. It was like about 10 feet away from them, a few feet. They were having a medical emergency. And the reason why they probably didn't help is because they're abortion doctors. They're not actually doctors. It's an oxymoron. An abortion doctor doesn't make any sense, because the whole premise of their job is to end life intentionally, and doctors are supposed to save lives. So let's take a listen to this clip. You can watch it on the stream. It's really interesting. You've got these doctors like looking frantic and confused as somebody's having a medical emergency. They're all in a bunch of lab coats. Take a listen. Oh, let's see here. I'm going to try to get this clip rolling. Yeah, for some odd reason, it's not playing, but that's all right. We're going to play it on the other side. I got to take a quick break anyway. We're going to be right back with this clip. And then I want to talk about JD Vance at this town hall with Chris Cuomo, because he says, hey, Republicans need to get better about talking about abortion. And I agree with him 100%. It is Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. We'll be right back.
Necessarily becoming.
Yeah, Larry, I appreciate you tuning in and discussing this. Without pain medication, when baby's legs are torn off its bodies, it's not the woman's body. Yeah. And the baby's arms are ripped off its body, it's not the woman's body. When the needle is inserted into the baby's skull to suck its brain out, that's not the woman's body. When the baby is one that dies and the woman gets up and walks away, that's not the woman's body. Yeah, I make this argument all the time. And plus, what are we all entitled to? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, life comes first. Even if you want to make this argument that it's the woman's body and it's your choice, it's your freedom, as Kamala Harris says, right? Life comes first. Everybody has the right to life. So that comes first over everything else. If we just start killing people, then they have no freedom. Okay. So right to life comes first for a reason. We should be preserving everybody's life. And these doctors, obviously, they're not actually doctors. You guys are going to love this clip because they just sat there dumbfounded, like, what do we do? There's a medical emergency happening. They're not actually doctors. As I said, it's an oxymoron. They're tasked with ending life, and doctors are supposed to be saving lives. So they're not actually like real doctors. This guy is an OBGYN for 25 years. Any kind of doctor. Yeah, I get it. Like you're an OBGYN and you're not maybe like trained in how to respond to a medical emergency, I guess, like on a daily basis. But most doctors, you get their doctorate, right, and practice, know basic anatomy and know how to respond to medical emergencies. Okay, so that's, I saw some of that. Oh, well, they're abortion doctors. They didn't know how to respond to that. Maybe not like as great as like an ER doctor would know how, but or a trauma doctor of some kind. But they're still doctors. They have a doctorate and they went through basic anatomy courses and how to respond to a medical emergency. So none of them even bothered to go and help this woman. There's like 20 of them in lab coats. Like what? Like you didn't even bother to respond. JD Vance, he talks about how Republicans have to get better about talking about abortion. And, this is an issue from a polling standpoint that Democrats have an advantage over. And, that has to deal with a lot. A part of that has to deal with the fact that the left and the media, I repeat myself, they're both leftist. The media is leftist. But they're lying about our position on it. Okay, most people actually hold the position. I am probably the most extreme person when it comes to abortion. In the cases of rape, incest, all of it, I say everybody has the right to life, period. Now, most people have the position, most Republicans have the position that Donald Trump has, which is in the three exceptions: life of the mother, incest, rape, all those exceptions, right? The three exceptions. The left has lied about this. They think that, we're going to control women's bodies, control who they decide to sleep with, and blah, blah, blah. So the left and the media, they've been lying about the right's position on this. They're not as extreme as me, to be honest with you. But even in that case, they'll continue to lie and say, oh, the right, is super extreme in the sense that they want to outlaw like things like contraception, which is just not true. Contraceptives and things like that, birth control or whatever. The right has never come after those things. And they just straight out lie to you. So that way you continue to vote against the right on this issue if you're a single issue voter. Conservatives, they did lose a statewide ballot initiative in Kansas. And that was shocking. So we do need to work on our messaging and how we talk about this issue. I really do believe so. And Vance says it's crucial. He says, it's not people out there who are just wanting to have abortions. They're not enthusiastic about having abortions. A lot of times it feels like it's the only option for them, And what I think we need to get better at is providing more information about different options out there, pregnancy resource centers, right? Of adoption, things like that, and keeping people's money in their pocket is probably number one. The number one reason why people have abortions is due to financial reasons. Amber Thurman, she had twins and aborted her twins, and then she tragically died because she had a botched abortion. Really, it was a pill that she took, and she bled out due to those pills. Unfortunately, really sad. But she cited the fact that she was just starting to feel like she was getting on her feet. She was going to nursing school and she just didn't have the money, right, for children. We need to keep more money in people's pockets, number one. And that means cutting taxes. That means, getting the economy back on track, number one. Number two is providing people information about their next step when it comes to their pregnancy, and abortion is not your only option. And that's what a pregnancy resource center does. And we have one right here in Bloomington, Living Alternatives. Check it out. Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. You can go ahead and find me on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Before we took the break, I was going to play this little clip. Now, it's really interesting to see visually, so I highly recommend you go to the stream and check it out. But this sound is wild. They just start talking about abortion, and then somebody screaming in the crowd, "Hey, we have a medical emergency here. We have a medical emergency." All of these doctors in these lab coats, and I say they're doctors, they're not really doctors. As I told you before, it's an oxymoron. If you're an abortion doctor, you're really not a doctor, because the whole premise of your job is to end life. Which is the antithesis of what a doctor is actually supposed to be. They're supposed to save lives, right? And obviously, these people didn't jump at the chance to save somebody's life in the crowd there. Let's take a listen here.
Ill and dying.
Continue.
Nationwide.
Somebody screaming.
I think someone needs some medical assistance over here.
The doctor in the lab coat points to the woman having the medical emergency and says, "I think we have a medical emergency here. Somebody needs to provide this woman assistance." You aren't you? This guy specifically who was talking, he's a OBGYN, and I get it. He's not an ER doctor, but I mean, come on. You know basic anatomy. You know how to respond to somebody's medical needs, don't you? You should. Todd Ivy is his name. And he was standing at the podium. He was trying, and he has a doctorate. Richard Todd Ivy. Ivy. He was standing at the podium. He was trying to continue his pro-abortion remarks before acknowledging that a Harris supporter was in the crowd there and having a health crisis. And he points to the Harris supporter having the health crisis, and he says, "Somebody needs to get this person medical attention." Wow. They were all wearing lab coats, looking frantic, and the crowd was shouting for a medic. We have somebody over here who needs a medical attention. People are shouting. And he points with his finger in the direction of the emergency, and he says, "I think someone needs medical assistance over there." Wow. They couldn't even pretend to care about this Harris supporter having a medical emergency, because here's the thing, folks. They specialize in ending life, not saving it. Okay, that's why they didn't respond to this woman. And they were more concerned. The fact that he continues his pro-abortion remarks, they were more concerned about saying Trump bad and fear-mongering about all the things Trump is going to do once he's in office when it comes to abortion. And they were more concerned about that than somebody having a medical emergency. That's the kind of people Kamala Harris surrounds herself around. And like I said, whatever happened to safe and rare, safe, legal, and rare abortions, right? How did we go from that to abortion on demand all day, every day, and a bunch of doctors getting up there and saying that it's the best thing since sliced bread? Getting an abortion is the best thing since sliced bread. We're so far past safe and rare, okay? Because now we're giving women, in the case of Amber Thurman, who was talking about, she had really what I call a botched abortion, where she was given pills to expel the babies. She had 2 of them, twins, and she was given pills, and then ultimately her life ended because she bled out everywhere, which is so sad. And that's not safe. Would you say that that's safe, providing women these experimental drugs to get rid of their children? Not safe at all. So a majority of voters really don't care about this issue. It is for some, the single issue vote, right? Okay, so some women will say, "Oh, this is the issue I'm voting on, and I vote for this issue only." But a majority of voters, they don't really care about abortion, and they're not single issue voters. A majority of voters take into consideration things like the economy, national security, all kinds of other things, your Second Amendment rights. And they might take abortion into consideration. But like I said, Trump is really kind of weak on abortion. He believes in the 3 exceptions, said he's not going to do a national ban, gave it up to the Supreme Court while he was president, and the Supreme Court ruled on it, right? So Trump is not like extreme on abortion. I think he's the most pro-life president we've ever had in modern American history. So how much do you want to bet these doctors aren't even doctors? I don't know. People say that this was a Dr. Richard Ivy and that he's been an OBGYN for 25 years. I would not be shocked if these people had actually been, people they picked up off the street with theater degrees and they're paid actors. I would not doubt that, not for a second. And how many undecided voters do you think that she will win if she gets up a bunch of doctors in lab coats, fake doctors in lab coats, and have them whine about abortion and a bunch of ways to kill unborn babies? You think that she's going to get a ton of undecided voters in this little campaign stunt where she had these doctors up there? I would bet no. A lot of people are going to look at this and it's not going to sway somebody one way or another if they're an undecided voter. All right, I do have to take a quick break, but I do want to get to JD Vance. He did a town hall on News Nation, and he says that, hey, Republicans have to do a better job discussing the abortion issue, and I think he's right. I think a lot of Republicans, myself included, will talk about how, people are enthusiastic about abortion. But really, it's not a majority of people who are enthusiastic about abortion. It's only these like doctors up here that are, a part of Kamala Harris's inner circle, right? Where they're enthusiastic about abortion. Now, the majority of people actually having those abortions are not enthusiastic about it. A lot of the times they feel like it's their only option. And we have to keep that in mind as Republicans going forward when discussing this issue, because let's face it, Republicans suck at messaging when it comes to abortion because it's such a divisive issue, and abortion is so disgusting at its core. But we have to remember these people feel like this is their only option. So I will be coming back. Finishing up this conversation about JD Vance and how he spoke about abortion at this town hall with Chris Cuomo. I also want to talk about how a disabled veteran made her ways to the polls. Okay, see, case in point, you don't need mail-in ballots. Okay, this woman, she was disabled. She made it to the polls and was of right mind, unlike, Jimmy Carter, who I don't think was in his right mind casting his ballot. I'm going to be honest with you, but this woman, she makes a powerful case to go vote. And, like I say on the show, I would walk over broken glass. I've already voted. I would walk over broken glass to go vote for Donald Trump this election. It is an election cycle. It is the election of our lifetime. I'll be right back. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Yeah, it shows that they're really desperate. And I don't think that they're actually going to gain any kind of ground right now, this close to the election. Like, this is something that they should have done in the beginning with the doctors and the doctors coming out and talking about pro-abortion or whatever and advocating for abortion. This feels like something that they should have done in the beginning, not towards the end. Towards the end, you need your swing voters, right? And the abortion issue is something that you probably shouldn't even be talking about this close to an election, just because swing voters really don't look at that issue when it comes to their ultimate decision. And I don't think carting out a bunch of fake doctors out there is going to sway voters one way or another. Getting them to talk highly of abortion is not going to sway a swing voter. So, yeah, it was really silly. It shows they're desperate, which I don't know. I don't see her winning this election at all, folks. I've got some polling numbers, and we're gonna take a look at those. I mean, it's really close when it comes to the polling, but I mean, if she wins this, it's got to be stolen. Am I right? Who in their right mind would vote for somebody like this woman? She didn't get any votes in the primary. She was undemocratically selected to be the Democrat nominee. I don't see how this woman wins. And you can see it in Pennsylvania. There's people who are posing as election workers. Now, I don't know what Pennsylvania's law is. I'd imagine it's probably pretty similar to Illinois. I'll look it up here in a second, where the election workers don't have to display their name on their badge. It used to be where election workers had to provide their name or display a name on a badge. They do still have to, and in the state of Illinois anyway, initial your ballot with their initials. Okay, but now they're not required to provide you their name. They go by a letter. So election judge A, election judge B, C, D, right? And you know, when you have a law like that in place, I mean, that's nefarious. I don't care whoever was behind that law. I don't even know who was behind that law in the state of Illinois when it was passed, but God dang, that is wild. The fact that you can't ask for your election judge's name. You know, you want transparency in the process. You want people to have confidence. How am I supposed to have confidence in a system where you don't provide me your name and I have to give you my ballot? And in some cases, when the machines malfunction, I have to give you my ballot and trust you to run my ballot at the end of the day when the polls close. You know, if the machine malfunctions, you put it in the emergency bin, and then you count it at the end of the day. How am I supposed to trust that when you won't even provide me your name? You know, trust and respect is a two-way street. You earn somebody's trust by being a good person and by being transparent, really. You know, I'm not going to trust a stranger. And if you provide me your name, that makes me feel a little bit better because there's a chain of custody, right? So if something happens, then I can say, hey, you know, this person was the one who grabbed my ballot. But you can't even say that. You can't say, you know, um, Jane Smith didn't grab my, or Jane Smith grabbed my ballot. You'd have to say election judge A grabbed my ballot. Maybe it was B. I'm not too sure. Okay, so of course, people don't trust a system where that system doesn't even provide you their name. Okay, we're not going to trust a system that results or that has it to where you can't even provide your name as an election judge to voters. Of course, nobody's going to trust that. So in Pennsylvania, that's been going on where people are posing as election judges, printing fake badges, saying they're election judges, and going out and in the line and collecting people's ballots, their early voting ballots, you know, in the line to go scan it through the machine. You'll have election judges, fake election judges, walk through. So if there is any thing that you see isn't normal, and that's why I've been encouraging people to go vote early, is so that way you have time. So say a machine malfunctions and an election judge tells you to put it in an emergency bin, you can tell that election judge, no, I'm not going to be doing that. Let's shred this ballot. Let's shred this ballot together, right? You can say, nope, I'm not going to be doing that. I will come back a different day. So you have time in that case. If you go and vote early, you have time to come back if there's something nefarious going on. If somebody's going up and down the line collecting the ballots and you're not the one feeding it through the tabulator or through the voting machine, then you have time to come back and do it when everything is operating correctly. Okay, so when things like that happen, you just need to say, nope, I will be coming back a different day. Hopefully you're going out and you're voting early. And if anything happens, you'll be able to have enough time to go back and do it the right way. So I'll be right back. It's JD Vance talking about Republicans missing something in how they talk about abortion. He says, quote, "This is not how people are like enthusiastic about having abortion. Sometimes they just feel like it's their only option." We're going to be chatting about JD Vance here on Conservative Cat. Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Now, before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about JD Vance, and now he was at this town hall. It was hosted by Chris Cuomo. He's really been fascinating to watch. Now, we are like, what is it, 6 days away? Something like that from the election. I just can't believe how fast it's approaching here. We are going to be doing a live election show for 2 hours, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. that night. I'll be providing as much details as I possibly can, the results as they come in. And we'll be chatting with a lot of candidates, exclusive interviews. It's going to be very Illinois focused. We're going to be talking about the Illinois referenda that you will be seeing on your ballot. There's 3 questions statewide, but then there's also some countywide initiatives like ousting the auditor, which I've talked about before on the program. The auditor is your last line of defense against any kind of misspending, your government doing some nefarious things with spending. So getting rid of that position and that elected position, and then having somebody do that work internally ruins any kind of chance of having a transparent government. Okay. And I told you that the League of Women Voters, which is kind of like Democrat, I'll say it, it's a Democrat organization. They say they're nonpartisan, but that's just not true. And they actually, on their social media page, right? If you look at the McLean County League of Women Voters, what they do is they will say our media partners, NPR. And we know that NPR, if you look at all of the studies, NPR is like, what is it, a 63% Democrat favorability. I think it's even higher, 70% Democrat favorability or something like that. If you look at the studies, it's a Democrat news outlet. Okay, so this is a Democrat organization. They have ties with NPR, right? Our media partners, WGLT, right? That's what they say on their social media. It's clear that they are advocating for Democrat policy and Democrat officials, not explicitly because they want to keep this nonpartisan charade up, but they are behind ousting that auditor in not only McLean County, but also Champaign County. Now, the state of Illinois, they have gone after the county auditors as well. There's only about 14 or so in the state, county auditors, because they wrote a provision that says, what is it? Counties with 70,000 population and 3 to 3 million, they can have county auditors. So they excluded Cook County. Cook County doesn't have to have an auditor via the statute, but the rest, it's all kind of, how do I say this, baked in the cake to ensure there is no government transparency. They've gotten rid of a majority of auditors via referendum. In Peoria County, they did it a couple of years ago. So this is a coordinated effort. It's a coordinated attack against government transparency to get rid of the county auditors across the state. A lot of the county government, so county board members, they will go on to become state legislators. And I don't think I need to tell you that our state elected officials are corrupt. And they get practice, right, on the county board level. They get their practice on the county board level. And they do really corrupt things like, not putting money in the Illinois fund to gain interest, the ARPA funds, right? This happened in Champaign County, and the county auditor actually pointed this out. The Champaign County auditor pointed this out that, hey, you didn't put the money in a fund to gain interest, and you lost over $2 million of potential revenue. And we could have alleviated the pain of taxing the citizenry had you done that. This is protocol. You're supposed to put money from the feds in a interest-bearing account, and you lost $2 million by not doing that. That's what the county auditor said to the Champaign County Board. And they said, fine, we'll go ahead and pass a referendum to oust you, county auditor. We'll go ahead and get a referendum on the ballot to say no more county auditor. Michelle Anderson years ago, right? Reportedly, I haven't been able to confirm it with her trying to reach her, but reportedly there was a situation where you had a gentleman. He purchased with county dollars plane ticket for he and his daughter. His ticket would have been covered. I don't know if they were going to some convention or something in Las Vegas or what, but he used county funds to do it. Now, allegedly, he reimbursed the county after doing this, but not. The county auditor, of course, called them out on this. Okay, and called it out like, hey, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be swiping the county card. If you need a reimbursement, then or get it on your personal card and ask the county for a reimbursement, but you shouldn't be using, it doesn't work in the private sector that way, right? People with their corporate credit card, they don't swipe for a new pair of shoes, Now, perhaps the county or perhaps the corporation will give you the new pair of shoes, but you swipe it on your personal and then you get reimbursed for it. But if there's any kind of, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be purchasing this on my maybe I should be purchasing this on my personal card, then you purchase it, just play it safe, purchase it on your personal card. In the corporate world, you can't use the corporate credit card for personal things. Okay, so you shouldn't be able to use taxpayer dollars for personal things. Tiffany Henyard in Dalton, right? She was taking lavish trips with taxpayer dollars. The county auditor is supposed to catch these kinds of things. I do want to talk about JD Vance. I do have to take a quick break, though. So JD Vance, like I said, he was at this town hall. It's a News Nation town hall. I don't know where Tim Walz is. He might be yelling at somebody in Wendy's drive-thru or something. Kamala Harris, she was on with Club Shay Shay, which I guess he's an NFL legend or something. Shannon Sharpie. And we are like 6 days away. So they are squeezing out every little media appearance they can. Trump, he recorded an interview with Joe Rogan. They're working to get out there in the media. So JD Vance took part in this News Nation town hall. And, again, he shows us why Donald Trump made the best choice with JD Vance. I am convinced of that more and more every day. And, everybody's getting ready for their closing arguments, and Vance has a couple of powerful things that he said at this News Nation town hall that I think need to be amplified. And he's got some really good closing arguments 7 or 6 days away from the election. So this was hosted, of course, by Chris Cuomo, the guy. He's like the main guy at News Nation. Okay, so he has been really fascinating to watch this election cycle. My favorite clip of him is, of course, at the DNC. And people are saying that this is the new or the real Chris Cuomo. And when he was at CNN, he was just playing a character. He was trying to get a paycheck and he was acting like a deranged leftist, much like I did, I guess, during college in order to pass, right? I tried it one time. The professor, he failed me. I've never failed a paper before in my life. It was a 20-page paper. I worked real hard on it. And I was talking about how Donald Trump's speech at Mount Rushmore was a good political speech, right? And that was what my essay was about, essentially. And he failed me for it. And that was the last time I tried to be open about my political views on campus. I was not going to pass college if I did not act like a deranged leftist. In fact, I actually had a professor. I wrote an essay and I said something to the effect that Donald Trump was caused like an insurrection, January 6th or something like that. And she said, okay, now what is the charge called? It's called treason. And what happens to treasonous people? She was trying to get me to go further in my essay and call for the hanging really, of Donald Trump. That's what a professor at Illinois State University, I have it documented in red ink right on my essay, where she wanted me to go as far as to say, hey, we should kill Donald Trump because of what happened at January 6th. I had a professor like that. So I don't know. The jury's still out on my end. I don't know if this is the real Chris Cuomo and if he was just playing a character for CNN to get a paycheck. I can see where somebody does that. I did it in college. I had to act like a leftist just to pass, right, and get my degree. So I don't know. He's fun to watch, though, during this election cycle for sure. I've got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. We'll play the clip with JD Vance at News Nation Town Hall next. Hey, good morning. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. I do want to play a clip of Chris Cuomo at the DNC just because I absolutely love it. And I think that it's a gem, just so that way you understand where we're at with Chris Cuomo and where he's at this election cycle. His politics are my politics in this clip. I'm like, yes, go Chris Cuomo. He calls out all of the rich elitists looking down on those of us who work hard. And he points to the suites at the DNC and he goes, they're like $500,000 a suite. And he goes, that's not the teachers, that's not the Cub Scouts, right? Those are the corporations who the Democrat Party says that they're going to, regulate or pay their fair share, make them pay their fair share. No, they're not. They're buddies. Okay, so I'm going to play that clip, but I also do want to play the clip where JD Vance says it's crucial that the message changes for Republicans because we pull so badly on this issue with abortion, which I don't know, it might be a badge of honor really to pull badly with abortion. I mean, do you really want to poll well with the people who are pro-abortion? I don't know, but he says the messaging needs to change, which I do think it needs to change because conservatives lost a statewide ballot initiative to kind of regulate abortion in Kansas. So clearly this ballot initiative was worded in such a way that was off-putting in Kansas, okay, one of the most pro-life states out there, and conservatives lost it. So they really need to work on their messaging. I think we need to be softer in a sense that, hey, abortion is wrong, but it's a sin to kill. But you being the, murderer, it doesn't mean that you're a terrible person. It just means you did a terrible thing. And a lot of these people aren't enthusiastic about having abortion. We need to remember that. And sometimes they feel like that's the only option available to them. So we'll be chatting about that. JD Vance, he says a couple of things that need to be amplified. What else? We've got so much to get to, so let's get to your comments here. McLean and all counties need an elected auditor. So many examples of conflicts of interest. IT contract abuses and taxpayer exploited for funds for taxes, assessment, yes, and tax system for sure. Yeah. So, for example, in Champaign County, what had happened there, you've got these funds that were given, and they were the ARPA funds from the feds. And what's supposed to happen is that's supposed to go into an interest-bearing account so it can gain some interest and alleviate the taxpayers a little bit. And they lost $2 million in interest on this money because they didn't put it in an interest-bearing account. So that auditor called that out. And subsequently, now I don't know if this is the reason why, but shortly after he published an editorial calling out a sales tax referendum as well. He had called out, this, of course, the $2 million in losses. That's where he actually was where they actually passed a referendum eliminating the position of county auditor in Champaign County was shortly after he called out the $2 million in losses. Now, about a year prior, or back in December of 2023, Now, that was in July of 2024, right, where they passed this referendum to oust the county auditor in Champaign. And that was after he had called out the $2 million in losses. Now, let's rewind a little bit to December of 2023. He published an editorial in the News Gazette about, of course, the sales tax referendum that they've gotten. He says that we don't need to increase taxes on people. We are doing fine financially to a point where we don't have to increase the sales taxes. We need to cut, spending. This is the nature of his publication in that editorial, and they voted to oust him then, but the referendum resolution failed back then. Okay, so they brought it back in July after he pointed out the $2 million in losses. Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. McLean and all counties need an elected auditor. Yes, I agree. There has been a coordinated attack, in my belief, that there's been a coordinated attack against government transparency, and the way you go after government transparency is by getting rid of the auditor, the person tasked with holding the government accountable, the county government accountable. So the League of Women Voters is behind this. They were behind it in Champaign County. They're behind it in McLean County. They recently ousted a Peoria County auditor. The state of Illinois is, of course, doing their job by crafting statutes to get rid of county auditors across the state by, putting population parameters or limitations on it to where there's only like 14 or so, I'd say less than 20 auditors across the state. And that's not by coinkydink. Okay. It's because there is an attack against government transparency here, and they're going after the county auditors, and they've been doing it for some time. This is just the newest addition to the attack. Here in McLean County, they're trying to get rid of Michelle Anderson, the county auditor there. And like I said, it doesn't, if you don't agree with what Michelle or her performance, her job performance, then just let's elect a new one. I don't understand why we have to get rid of the county auditor. Oh, wait, I do understand. It's because you don't want to be held accountable as a government when it comes to your spending. Same thing is going on in Champaign County. They're saying, oh, it's his performance. His performance sucks. He's got all kinds of HR violations or whatever. And really, when it comes down to it, it's because they don't like the auditor, because the auditor makes them feel, oh boy, somebody's looking over my shoulder, which is what they should do. They should look over your shoulder and point out when you're not acting in the best interest of the taxpayer. I do have to take a quick break. Man, these segments, they just fly by like that. So we're going to come back. We're going to talk about JD Vance. I also want to talk a little bit about Joe Rogan. He addressed how YouTube is censoring his Trump interview. Hey, good morning. So do appreciate you tuning in. Smash that like button. That would really help me out. Smash the like button and share this out with your friends. How fast they certified the election. Yeah, remember when Pritzker and Gensinger bragged about how fast they certified the election? Yeah, there's a lot of things going on across the state or across the nation where you've got Pennsylvania election judges, well, people posing as Pennsylvania election judges. This is really kind of concerning. You know, they're going to brag about, oh, we certified the election so quickly. You know, there should be recounts if things are, curious or things are not looking like they should be. Candidates should question their election authorities and their election judges and ask for recounts. Okay, that's part of the democratic process, is asking for recounts, and you shouldn't brag about, oh, we certified it so quickly. There should be room for and time for candidates to contest the results and to say, hey, something's not right here. In Pennsylvania, we actually saw some people posing as election judges. They were collecting people's ballots in line. And we don't know the name of this individual yet, but we'd like a recount. And we'd like to do a special election and recount the votes. That should be something that the candidate is entitled to, and you'll see it on your ballot. There's this question: should we go civilly, or should we go up against candidates civilly and hold them civilly liable when they intimidate election workers? I voted no. Why? Because there's already laws on the books that protect election workers, that protect all people from intimidation and threatening behavior. Okay, there's already laws criminally on the books. And if that's happening, then there's ways to go after those people if they actually are threatening election workers. Now, in this case, what people are going to do, they're going to stretch the law, and they're going to say, oh, well, I felt intimidated because candidate A decided that they wanted a recount or asked me for a special election, and I felt that was intimidating. So we're going to sue this individual because I was intimidated by them asking for a recount or asking about the election process or asking why we allowed somebody onto the premises. This happened in Pennsylvania, somebody posing as an election judge collecting ballots. That's going on right now. If you see something like that, my recommendation is that you walk your happy butt right out of that polling place and you come back a different day. That's why I've been telling people to go vote early and keep your eyes peeled. Keep your eyes peeled for nefarious activity that's might be going on. And if not nefarious, just mistakes, malfunctions. They happen. And if things are malfunctioning that day or things aren't working, then don't take your chances and just walk right out and come back. That's why I tell people go vote early this year. So that way you are prepared for if something were to go south at that polling place. You can say, and you can take control of that situation and say, hey, you know what? No, I'm going to take my ballot and I'm going to vote a different day. I do want to talk about Joe Rogan addressing the YouTube censoring the Trump interview. He did address it. I don't like Joe Rogan at all. I'm going to be honest with you. Can't stand the guy. I think he's really annoying. I think that he's a terrible interviewer. I don't know why he's got millions of views. I mean, it might be because they smoke pot on the show and he says a lot of cuss words, and he's shock jockish because of that. But he addresses it. They are censoring it 100%. Joe Rogan kind of backpedaled that and said that they weren't. They're definitely censoring it because you can't look it up. Okay. And he said Joe Rogan says people are having a hard time seeing the Trump interview or searching up the Trump interview on YouTube. Here it is on X. Joe, that's because they're censoring it. Wake up, get your head out of the clouds, right? Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. Like I said, we're just like 6 days away from the election. Everybody's getting out there. Trump is on with Joe Rogan. We're going to get to that here in just a second because Joe Rogan addressed people YouTube censoring that interview. People are having a hard time searching up that interview on YouTube. So we're going to get to that. But Trump's out there. He recorded a podcast with Joe Rogan. Kamala, she was on with Club Shay Shay, which I guess is an NFL star. I don't even know who that is. But again, I don't watch the NFL. I'm a big Formula One fan, but I don't watch the NFL. Tampon Tim, he might be out there yelling at somebody at a Wendy's drive-thru or pretending to shoot guns. I don't know where he's at, but JD Vance, we know that he was at a town hall on News Nation. That was hosted by Chris Cuomo. I want to play this clip. This is Chris Cuomo at the DNC. I love Chris Cuomo. I love him this election cycle. I don't know if this is the real Chris Cuomo and he was, playing a character for CNN in order to collect a paycheck, but he's totally done a 360 and I'm here for it. I get that. I had to play a part in order to graduate college, unfortunately, because I had some really deranged professors who failed me for simply saying, oh yeah, Trump had a great speech at Mount Rushmore. And I analyzed his speech and they failed. This professor had failed me because I did that, because I analyzed a Trump speech and called it a good political speech. And he failed me for that. It was a great paper. I've never failed a paper in my life. I was a straight A student, high honors. I got all kinds of scholarships and stuff. And he was the first professor to have failed me on a paper ever. So definitely an outlier. I took a lot of time writing that paper. It was 20 plus pages. And he failed me on it because it simply was positive of Trump. So I get the whole pretending in order to collect a paycheck or in order to get something out. I needed to collect the degree, right? Because the field I wanted to go into, and I do use my degree today in order to get a job, had to use my degree. So very grateful that I ultimately got my degree. However, wouldn't have been made possible had I not given up my whole personality and given up my personal beliefs. And that's really sad. And that happens across campuses everywhere in this nation. And it's really sad. But I don't know if Chris Cuomo was playing a character or if that's the real Chris Cuomo. And now he's acting here because, it's popular to be anti-government now. But here's Chris Cuomo at the DNC. I really like this clip. Let's take a listen.
Is that they're going to go after corporate gouging and they're going to go after corporations, whether it's in taxes, largesse, loopholes. The RNC, we heard the same thing. They're going after the elites, the two sets of rules. Let me reveal a reality to you that has to be spoken to here, okay? These are the soldiers. These are the men and the women that go back to their constituencies and their communities and they fight. They take time from their jobs. They take time from their families. Republicans and Democrats alike, that's what they do. They need to charge these people up. They need to be able to get them on board. But there's another reality that is literally looking down on them. Greg, look at the ring of sweets, okay? This is not unique to Democrats. There is a game of money. When people talk about uniparty, we are strangled by the money reality in our politics. Those suites start at 500 grand. You think there's like a teacher group up in there? You think it's like the Cub Scouts of Columbia County, South Carolina, that's up in those boxes? Some of them are lobbies and good things. The media boxes, you think they're free? Why do you think I'm on the floor? News Nation is not a broke company. Nexstar is a massive organization. We are corporate media. We don't have one of those boxes because that's the game. You pay to play.
All right. So that's one of my favorite clips of Chris Cuomo this election cycle. Like I said, love Chris Cuomo this election cycle. He's fascinating to listen to. I want to play that clip just because he's the host of this town hall that JD Vance was at. Now, JD Vance, he was out there talking about abortion, which is one issue that Republicans have a really hard time polling. From a polling standpoint, Republicans have a hard time and Democrats have the advantage over Republicans when it comes to the abortion issue. Part of that is because the left and the media has lied about the right's position on this for decades. Another part of that is because the right is kind of sucky at the messaging. We suck at messaging when it comes to abortion and when it comes to talking about this issue. Case in point, conservatives, pro-lifers, they tried to pass a ballot initiative in Kansas, which is probably one of the most pro-life states out there, right? And they couldn't get it passed. Why? Because it was worded like it was worded terribly. So we need to work on the messaging. And JD Vance says this is crucial. Because we focus too much on the stereotypical leftist, the person who's enthusiastic, the Kamala Harrises of the world, where they're enthusiastic about abortion, or the doctors that I talked about earlier in the show, the OBGYNs that were up there talking about abortion and how great it is. We focus too much on the stereotypical leftist, and we forget that a majority of people who are receiving these abortions are not necessarily enthusiastic about abortions. They feel like this is the only option to them, and Republicans need to get better at the messaging moving forward. And I really want to talk about this clip here with JD Vance at the town hall with Chris Cuomo. He says we're missing something when we talk about abortion. So let's take a listen. Here we go.
Here's a question from X, the user unnamed. We'll call them user X. How do you justify campaigning for someone who does not share your beliefs on abortion law, exceptions, or a nationwide ban? If you become president over the next 4 years, would you favor a ban?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump's view is very clear here, and he won the Republican primary, right? So I don't agree with the user that Donald Trump and I have some massive difference of opinion here, but Donald Trump is the leader of the Republican Party, so his policy determines what we're going to do as a Republican governing coalition. And what he said is very simple, that he wants to, first of all, make it easier for people to choose life to begin with, make it less expensive, help address child care costs, and make it easier for young families to choose life in the first place. But on abortion policy specifically, what happened when the Supreme Court made its decision is that individual states, meaning the people in those states, get to make this decision. And that's been Donald Trump's, I think, consistent view, not just over the last couple of years, but really over his entire time in public life. Now, look, I come at this, and I'll be honest with you, I do care about protecting the vulnerable. I do think about this issue and how to make it easier for people to choose life. And I also recognize, Chris, I mean, look, I was raised in a family, I was raised in a neighborhood where I saw a fair number of young women have unexpected pregnancies and choose to terminate those pregnancies because they felt like they didn't have any other options. And I think that very often what we miss on my side, what we miss as Republicans, is that this is not people who are like enthusiastic about having abortion. Sometimes they feel like that's the only option available to them. And so what we, I think, ought to do as somebody who does want to promote the cause of life is to make it easier to choose life to begin with. And I think that if we do that, if we stop the crazy medical bills that young women come home with when they have a baby, if we make it easier to access childcare, I actually think, one, will earn the trust of the American people, but two, will actually be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I think a lot of Democrats, when they hear pro-life, they assume, well, you know, and I even hear people say this on the campaign trail, that say, well, you're pro-birth, but you don't care about the baby, you don't care about the mom. I think we've got to earn people's trust, because I do care about the babies, and I do care about the moms, and I care about the dads. And I think there's something really scary happening in our country right now, where so many young families are choosing not to have children at all. They're choosing not to bring new life into the world. Even though they say they would like to, they feel like they can't afford it. That is such a failure of our present leadership that a lot of people would like to have families but can't. We got to change that.
Do you think that...
Okay, so this was a great answer. We have to change the messaging. We have to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word, and we have to make it affordable to have children. We have to also provide more options to women. You know, Living Alternatives Pregnancy Resource Center, that's the local pregnancy resource center here in Bloomington. You know, there's different options for women out there. They don't have to feel like abortion is their only option. And we have to get better as Republicans in the messaging on this issue. Another answer he provided, JD Vance here at this News Nation town hall, he was talking about how there's a lot of animosity toward friends and family who think different than you. You know, I don't really understand this because I have a lot of friends and family who are voting for Donald Trump. We all kind of agree. Now, there are some family members and some friends, obviously, that I have where we do not think alike. And I've got some of those who are not voting for Donald Trump but nobody really likes Kamala, so they're just kind of not, they're sitting out this election. So they're not voting for Donald Trump, but they're also not voting for Kamala. I've tried to convince them to vote for Donald Trump, but some people are just going to be sitting out, right? But that doesn't mean we have to hate each other. Just because you're not voting for Donald Trump doesn't mean that I hate you and we can't spend time laughing together, telling jokes as a family or as friends. And we don't need to constantly be arguing over who has better talking points. So Obama, just this past week, he said something about divisiveness. He said, he doesn't know when Americans became so divisive with each other. Well, I could tell you. I could actually pinpoint it for you. It was actually during your presidency when you sent college kids off to these liberal colleges, and you sent them back home for Christmas break, and they started picking fights at the Christmas dinner table, right, or at the Thanksgiving dinner table. And you've got the mainstream media saying, hey, don't pick fights with mom and dad at the Thanksgiving table when you're back home from college. Just don't talk about politics at all. There's a balance. You can talk about politics at the family dinner table, but you don't have to hate somebody because of their politics, right? You can continue to laugh and talk about other things other than politics when you're at the dinner table, but you shouldn't avoid it either. And when you've got Barack Obama's presidency, during that time, these colleges became so liberal and really just indoctrinated these college kids. And when they went home, they hated their parents. And then you've got the media. It's twofold here. The media is telling you that you can't talk about politics as if it's like some sort of dirty word, and that it's impossible to have a relationship with your mom and dad because your politics are different. Right? That's what the media will tell you. It's impossible to talk about it without hating each other. That's not true. You can talk about it and not hate each other. What a concept. So JD Vance here, I want to play this clip. This is a good one, where he talks about how voters should not cast aside their friends and family over differing political views. And this is really great. I mean, again, I'm telling you, Trump did a great job picking this vice presidential candidate, or this VP pick. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
Don't get too personal all the time, but one of the things I've seen, especially from some of my wife's friends and some of my friends, is if they disagree with us on politics, sometimes they'll get very personal about it. And if you're discarding a lifelong friendship because somebody votes for the other team, then you've made a terrible, terrible mistake, and you should do something different. Like, don't cast aside. Like, most of my family obviously is going to vote for Donald Trump and JD Vance, and if they're not, actually, I need to talk to them. But I've got friends who like me personally, acquaintances who aren't necessarily going to vote for me. That doesn't make them bad people. And we can't, this is my most important advice, whether you vote for me, whether you vote for Donald Trump, whether you vote for Kamala Harris, don't cast aside family members and lifelong friendships. Politics is not worth it. And I think if we follow that principle, we'll heal the divide in this country.
There you go. JD Vance, and the campaigns, both Kamala Harris's campaign and Donald Trump's, they're in closing argument mode. And unfortunately for the Harris-Walz campaign, they're in panic. And this is why they're going back to the Democrat talking point. The talking point that they've stuck with really since the 1940s is, quote, my opponent is Hitler. They've called Ronald Reagan Hitler. They called Nixon Hitler. They called pretty much every George Bush. They called them all Hitler. My opponent is Hitler. This is a tired talking point that the Democrat Party has used time and time again. And Trump Vance, they're using their closing argument time to talk about unity. Along with some anti-Kamala zingers as well. JD Vance squeezed those in there. If they're not voting for me, I got to talk to them. But I like Vance. I like what he's doing here in these closing arguments in the final days prior to the election. He's talking about unity. This is amazing. All right, I do have to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. you go ahead, smash that like button. We are going to be hosting an election live stream. I will be on the radio for a couple of hours and also on the live stream for a couple of hours on election day. That's November 5th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We're going to have exclusive interviews. We're going to have exclusive interviews with county board candidates. We're going to be talking about a lot of the campaign contributions that these candidates have gotten. Actually, Jim Rogel, I'll continue to talk about this. Smash this like button. If you love the Conservative Cat Show, share this out because this dark money stuff is nuts. You've got $10,000 sitting in the campaign coffers of Jim Rogel, who is an incumbent McLean County board member in District 4. Running against him, Jerry Klinkner. Jerry Klinkner, I don't even think he's made enough to have to report it to the state, because you have to report your campaign finance dollars to the state. But he's made like a few $100s or something like that. Jim Rogel's sitting on $26,000, okay, in his campaign coffers. Why? I don't know. It's because they're freaking out because he's got a challenger, Jerry Klinkner, right? This is in District 4. Now, Jim Rogel received $10,000 of the $26,000 from a dark money group. It's called Local Economic Jobs and Development Fund. Do your research on this. Local Jobs and Economic Development Fund. This is really concerning. It's got ties to the Tides Foundation. Tides Foundation is backed by George Soros. So you've got billionaires in the pockets of McLean County board members. That should concern you as a voter. And we're going to be talking about things like that on the election show on November 5th. We're going to be taking a deep dive into their campaign coffers, looking at who contributed to their campaigns. Follow the money is what I say. You can tell a lot by a person simply by who contributes to their campaign. So, you know, the local win or the local jobs and economic development fund, they're like a pro clean energy group, I guess. Clearly, you know, there's a lot of things going on in McLean County and counties across the state when it comes to carbon pipelines, windmills, you know, on the Joe Rogan podcast, which we will get to here in just a second. On the Joe Rogan podcast, Donald Trump talked about the whales and how windmills are causing the whales to die. And that's true. There's a documentary out there. I watched it. I mean, they're washing up. They're beached whales. There's way more dead whales out there. And it's because of the, I'm not going to pretend to be a marine biologist here, but it's because of the frequency at which the windmills turn. It produces a sound that is audible to whales, and it pretty much drives them insane, and then they die, and then they are washed up. So they talked about that on the Joe Rogan podcast. We're gonna get to the Joe Rogan podcast. Yes, I'm glad that you agree. I don't like Joe Rogan. I can't stand the guy. I listened to about 45-50% of the Joe Rogan podcast, and they talked about a lot of good things. They talked about a lot of foreign policy and Donald Trump and how he can't stand people like General Milley, right? And how there's actual military generals on the ground in places like Iraq who know what they're talking about and know what they're doing. And the people in Washington, D.C. have no clue what they're talking about. For example, you know, the Afghanistan withdrawal, they had advised that they advised Trump, not when they were talking about pulling out of Afghanistan, they had advised Trump to leave the military equipment. In what world does that make sense? Why would you leave the military equipment? He goes, oh, it's going to be cheaper, sir. It's not going to be cheaper. We're leaving our tanks, our weaponry, this incredible technology over there to be used by quite literally terrorists for their parades. They're doing that to mock the United States. They're, you know, driving around in our tanks and they're having parades with our military equipment. So no, and Donald Trump knew this. He goes, no, I'm not listening to you. So he goes all the way to Iraq and starts talking to the people on the ground. And he realizes very quickly that the Washington, D.C. generals have no clue what they're talking about. So we're going to talk about Joe Rogan. He had come out and said something to the effect of, oh, you know, YouTube is not censoring me. Don't worry, you know, but they kind of are because, and then he had to come out later on X and say, oh, you know, here is the clip. There's the full podcast of Trump and I, because people are having a hard time finding it online. It's because YouTube is censoring you. Just come out and say it, man. So I hate these wishy-washy people like Joe Rogan. The only reason why I think he's popular is because he smokes weed on his podcast. That's quite literally it. I think that's the only reason why he's as popular as he is. Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. The news and talk of Bloomington Normal. She has a message for voters. If she can vote, then you can too. I do want to talk about this lady. This is a really, it's a sweet clip. So she is a Vietnam vet, okay, and she's got a tube down her throat, and she traveled to vote in Virginia, Leesburg, Virginia. Because this is a very important election. Okay, she's an amputee, she's disabled, and her message to voters is, if she can vote, you can too. Do you want to play the? Hold on 1 second. Let me share this with you. You can find it on the stream as well. It's really, it touches your heart. Her name's Anne, and she's a disabled veteran who recently went out to vote. She didn't want to do the whole mail-in ballot thing. So let's take a listen.
My name is Anne. I am a Vietnam veteran, and I just voted. I went to Leesburg, the county seat in Northern Virginia, and cast my ballot from there. I wish you would all go do it. This is a very important election that we're coming upon. I want to thank you. And as I said, I was a Vietnam veteran. I served over 20 years in the military and in the reserves. And if I can get up and vote, you can get up and vote. Thanks so much, and goodwill to you all.
And then she salutes. That's it's so sweet. It was really heartwarming when I came across that, and I wanted to share it with you. Wait. So hold on a second. Hold on. You're telling me that you can go cast your ballot without mailing it in, and you're having trouble breathing, you're missing a leg, and you can still go do it without the mail-in ballot? Oh, incredible. Because according to the Democrats, right, there's no such thing as democracy if we don't have universal mail-in ballots, which is just nonsense. We know that's stupid. The mail-in ballots, why you're just begging for nefarious activity, to mail out ballots, and in the US with the US postal system. I say this all of the time. Would you mail yourself, put a check for $500 in the mail today? Would you mail yourself a check for $500, and are you willing to do that? No. A lot of times the U.S. Postal Service, right, I'm sorry, the mail just doesn't get there, or it's damaged, or somebody will take it, right? And that's just what happens with that government agency. Why would you trust the government agency with your ballot? And you don't know who you're giving your ballot to when you put it in the mail. So I also assume that she does not believe the whole suckers and losers hoax, or that Trump is literally Hitler. I'm willing to bet that she voted for Donald Trump. She doesn't explicitly say. But I wonder if she also thinks, what she thinks about Tim Walz's stolen valor. I bet she didn't really respect that Tim Walz said that he served in combat when he actually didn't. So, does she know that Trump didn't disrespect these fallen soldiers at the anniversary of the botched Afghanistan withdrawal? This was abysmal. Kamala Harris, touted that she was the last one in the room when it came to the Afghanistan withdrawal. People in the media said that Trump disrespected the fallen soldiers by going there and taking pictures with the people who asked to take pictures with him, okay, at the anniversary of the Afghanistan withdrawal. So I don't know. I think that we're closer to Armageddon than we ever have been before. We are much closer to World War III than we ever have been. And she's right when she says that this is the most important election of our lifetime. That's what Anne, the veteran, says here. And the left, They want to pretend that Donald Trump is going to start World War III. I think we're way closer to that under Kamala Harris's de facto first term. I don't think Joe Biden actually ran the country at all. It was probably Kamala Harris the whole time. So, while she gets up there and she pretends that she'll be able to effectively negotiate with people like Putin or Hamas or other hostile entities, she's not doing any of that now, obviously, and she's not doing a good job at negotiating with those people. I think that Joe Biden is not negotiating with those people. She's probably not even negotiating with those people. Anybody with a fraction of the brain can see that we are closer to Armageddon than we ever have been. And it's because these people don't know how to negotiate effectively with our adversaries, with hostile entities like Putin and Hamas. That being said, Anne here, she is a true patriot. I think that she's a patriot regardless of who she voted for. She didn't explicitly say who she voted for, but I wonder what she thinks about Tim Walz' stolen valor. I wonder if she believes the whole suckers and losers hoax, where Trump called them suckers and losers, or I wonder if she cares about the disrespect that Trump displayed towards the fallen soldiers, because he took pictures with the families who asked to take pictures with him. Okay. And they were like, oh, he's campaigning at this anniversary of the Afghanistan withdrawal. No. He was asked to take pictures by the family members. So that being said, I don't know who she voted for, but I thank her for her service, and go out and vote early, right? And I've been telling people go out, vote early, because if there's something that doesn't feel right or pass the sniff test, as I like to say the machines malfunction and then the election judge A, B, C, or D, because you don't know their names, right? Say they ask for your ballot to put it in an emergency bin to be counted later that night, and it doesn't really pass the sniff test for you. You're like, I don't trust that because you won't even give me your name. I really don't feel comfortable giving you my ballot. If something does not pass the sniff test for you while you go and vote, do it early so that way you can come back a different day when they've got it all together. Okay. And when the machines aren't malfunctioning. In Pennsylvania, we know that people are posing as election judges. I was watching the clips today. He was actually posing, a Democrat was posing as an election judge and collecting people's ballots and taking them away from the polling location. If you see something, say something. You can always text me, 309-451-9299. Also, if you see something and you don't feel comfortable voting that day, if something doesn't pass the sniff test, then just don't vote that day, right? Go a different day. That's the beauty of early voting. And we are showing up. Republicans, there is a red wave when it comes to early voting. I do have to talk about Joe Rogan next. He addressed how YouTube is censoring. Not really. He didn't address he's not saying that YouTube is censoring the Trump interview. But he also provides some truth about the Kamala Harris's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. And he provides us some truth about why she's not appearing on the podcast itself. So I'll be right back. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Yeah, it will be biblical. It'll be biblical. Yeah, it's going to be one heck of a show that we will be watching on November 6th. Yeah, so they're already kind of laying the groundwork for this. I think that there is going to be some sort of rioting. I don't know. I hope not. But if there is, they're already trying to pin it on the Trump supporters because you've got, government agencies saying, hey, be prepared. Be prepared for right-wing extremism, right? So, yeah, that is that it is going to be biblical. It is going to be biblical. We're going to be right back talking about the Joe Rogan Experience next on Conservative Cat. Hey, good morning. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. This is really interesting. So Obama called us clingers, Hillary called us deplorables, Kamala calls us fascists, and Joe Biden is calling us garbage. Yes, Trump supporters. They don't respect us. They don't want unity. As I said in the closing arguments, JD Vance here is talking about unity. He's talking about just because we aren't voting for the same person, that doesn't mean that we have to end a lifelong friendship or we don't have to, hate each other just because we're not voting for the same person. Okay, that's JD Vance in these final days of the election. Now you've got Joe Biden out there calling us garbage. Yes, calling 80 million plus people garbage, right? So they don't want unity. We want to make America great again. They don't want unity. I do want to talk about also Politico. So this is a really kind of incredible. Actually, I'm going to share this. Hold on. We're going to talk about Joe Biden, but also Politico. They are manipulating the story, right? So obviously, Joe Biden came out and called a bunch of Trump supporters, plural, supporters, everybody who supports Donald Trump, garbage. Okay. And then Politico is trying to manipulate the language here, and they included an apostrophe. So supporters, but apostrophe S, so indicating that there was only one supporter he called garbage. So Politico is kind of manipulating the story, and that shouldn't be surprising because we know the mainstream media just does this all the time. We do want to talk about Joe Rogan and his podcast. It is being censored on YouTube. Joe Rogan won't say it. I'll say it. And Joe Rogan also provides us a little bit of truth about how Kamala Harris will not be or could be appearing on the Joe Rogan podcast still. But the campaign has a bunch of a list of demands, and Joe Rogan, said, hey, can we do more than an hour? Can we have it at my studio? There's a list of demands from the Kamala Harris campaign, and that's what's making it kind of difficult. They're negotiating the terms of the interview. And it was easy with Trump because he's so transparent. He just said, yeah, I'll come and I'll do the full 3 hours, and we can do it the way you want to do it, Joe. Kamala won't do that. Why? Because she has something to hide. Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Obama called us clingers. Hillary called us deplorables. Kamala called us fascists. Now Joe Biden is calling us garbage. Take a listen. Here we go.
Oh, the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscionable. And it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done. Everything we know, the Puerto Rican.
Okay, so he called us garbage. Trump supporters, his supporters. That's the context here. Is Donald Trump's supporters. Okay, so the only garbage I see floating around are his supporters. Now, what Politico did, and this is really important that you see this, they quoted Joe Biden and they added an apostrophe to the word supporters. Okay, so indicating that he only called one supporter garbage. But that's not true. That's not what he did. When you look at the context of it, he says the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. But they add an apostrophe. Politico did. That's not what he was talking about. It's not one supporter. His hatred, his demonization of Latinos is unconscionable, and it's un-American. He was in a Zoom call with a Latino organization. It's totally contrary to everything we've done and everything we've been. That's what he's talking about. His administration. It's totally contrary. Trump is totally contrary to everything that we've done and everything that we've been. And he talks about Trump supporters, and he says that they're garbage. So I was telling you about JD Vance and his closing argument here. His closing argument is, hey, let's unify. We should be unifying together. We shouldn't be fighting at the family dinner table. Just because you didn't vote for Kamala Harris doesn't mean that I hate you, right? That's what JD Vance is out there talking about. That's the closing argument for the Trump team. And meanwhile, you've got Joe Biden out there not unifying anybody. They don't respect us. They don't respect you, and they don't want unity. So it couldn't be any clearer. The big difference here is that we want to make America great again. We want to unify the Republican Party area. At least, the Donald Trump team is calling for unification. Thought you, I guess we're not Nazis anymore. We're just garbage. Call me garbage. Joe Rogan, he was on with Donald Trump. I watched about 45 minutes of the Joe Rogan podcast. I'm not a big fan of Joe Rogan, so I can only take small doses of Joe Rogan. I think he's really just popular because he smokes weed on his podcast. Really, I think that's what it is. I don't think he's a very impressive interviewer. You could tell he was, kind of waiting for Donald Trump to stop talking to talk. He's not a very good listener, in my opinion. I don't like the Joe Rogan show. I don't like Joe Rogan all that much. And this is another reason why I don't like Joe Rogan all that much, is because he won't come out and say what's happening. He dances around this, where he addresses YouTube censoring the Trump interview. Okay, but he doesn't come out and say that YouTube is actually censoring the interview. He just says people are having a hard time searching for the interview on YouTube. Here it is on X, and he posts the full podcast on X. So this is clearly censorship. They're clearly censoring the interview with Donald Trump. And Joe Rogan, he finally sat down with Donald Trump for this podcast, and people have been saying, hey, I can't find it on YouTube. And you have to search really, really hard for it. So Kamala Harris was supposed to also do an interview with him. He addressed all of these topics on X. Rogan did on Twitter. He dropped his podcast on X and addressed the concerns of people not being able to find it on YouTube. And this is after he came out and said YouTube isn't censoring the podcast. So afterwards, he says there's an issue with searching for this episode on YouTube. Here is the full podcast of Donald Trump. And then he links to the full podcast. So, there's some confusion because Joe Rogan said that YouTube isn't throttling the podcast, but they clearly are. It's hard to find it, and he won't come out and say it, because he's not willing to do the right thing and come out and call YouTube out for censoring freedom of speech. So you type in the name of the world's famous, he is a very popular podcaster, obviously he's doing something right. I don't know. I think it's the weed. But you type in his name and then you type in the former president's name. And this podcast that has millions and millions of views on YouTube won't show up. They're throttling it. Clearly they're throttling it. And Joe Rogan is just too weak to come out and say that. So this obviously drew attention, and they couldn't you couldn't find the podcast. Then all of a sudden you could find the podcast, but you had to do a certain search for it. Yeah, it's just weird, right? I mean, it's really weird. Clearly, I think they're throttling it. A paranoid person, susceptible to conspiracy theories like me, right? One might think that YouTube and Google is actually censoring it and that they don't want people to see it. So that's what I really think is going on here. They don't want people to see it because in the interview, they did talk. My favorite part was when they talked about the whales, surprisingly. Donald Trump brought this up where the windmills are actually producing a frequency and an audio frequency that is killing the whales. So it's only audible to the whales and they are dying. So there's more and more beached whales. And they've linked it to scientists, marine biologists have linked it to the windmills, actually. This is a real thing. There's documentary upon documentary out there about this, how there's more and more beached whales. And it's because the sound of the windmills, the sound it produces, actually drives the whales insane. And then they die and then they're beached. So I really enjoyed that part of the interview. I also enjoyed Donald Trump talking about how all of the Washington, D.C. generals don't know what the hell they're talking about. And he went to Iraq and he went to the generals on the ground, like the actual generals who know what they're talking about. And he said, yeah, the generals like General Milley don't know what they're talking about. They advised me, Donald Trump, to leave our weapons when we were discussing on how we were going to withdraw from Afghanistan. And he said, heck no, I'm not doing that. And the generals in Washington, D.C. said, oh, it'll be cheaper, sir. And Donald Trump's like, no, it won't. You're literally insane if you think that it's cheaper to leave our U.S. military grade. This is top of the line technology. You really think it's in our best interest to leave our technology in the hands of radical terrorists? So I do want to talk about, I do have to take a break. I do want to talk about the October surprise, and it deals with YouTube censoring people like Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson. The New York Times, a reporter had texted both Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson, and this is the October surprise. They're going to be censoring people on YouTube prior to the election. They're going to be doing whatever they can to ensure that stories like what's going on in Pennsylvania, where you have people posing as election judges and collecting people's ballots while they're in line and taking them away from the polling place, they want to throttle people. They want to throttle, bloggers is what the mainstream media will call you, a blogger. They want to throttle people who see these things and tape these things, okay, and put it out there for people to see. So that's the October surprise here. The October surprise is that they're going to be censoring people on social media who call out the election steal. So I'll be right back. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 The News and Talk of Bloomington Normal. Hey, smash that like button and share this out with your friends. We're going to come right back. I'm going to share the text message that was shared, or that was texted over to Ben Shapiro. This is a reporter at the New York Times doing a bit, or doing like an article on, misinformation on YouTube or whatever. So here is the article, or here is the text itself. Hope you are well. My name is Nico Grant. I'm a reporter at the New York Times. I wanted to give you an opportunity to comment for an upcoming article that takes a look at how political commentators have discussed the upcoming election on YouTube. We rely on an analysis conducted by researchers at Media Matters. Media Matters is so leftist, it's not even funny. So researchers at Media Matters. Okay, rabid leftists, you mean? Here, let's blow this up a little bit. You might be able to see this more. Okay. Could you kindly provide us with comment or decline to comment by the end of day tomorrow, Tuesday, October 29th? Thank you so much for your time. Here are some things that we're going to include. Media Matters identifies 286 YouTube videos between May and August that contain election misinformation, including narratives that have been debunked, are not credible, or supported by evidence. Researchers identified videos posted by you in those 4 months that contain election misinformation. We feature a clip of you saying your party rigged many of the voting rules in advance of the election in order to ensure an extraordinary number of mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting. Yes. So that's what Ben Shapiro said, and they're saying that's misinformation. It's so true. Okay, so I don't know when the law changed. I'd have to look it up in Illinois, but they tried to do it this year, changing the election law in the middle of an election year to get rid of slated candidates. Okay, and there were already people gathering petitions to. And surprisingly, the Illinois Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. You can't change election law while we're in the election process. And, things like that did happen in states like Pennsylvania, probably here as well. I don't know what laws changed. I know that would never used to be a thing where election judges couldn't give you your name, because a few years ago when I voted, they had their name printed on the badge. And, for security reasons, election judges can no longer print their names on their badges or give the names to voters. I mean, that's just wild to me. So there's plenty of election laws that were changed. And to ensure, I know that in Illinois, it's legal to ballot harvest, which means me, silly old me, can go around door to door asking people for their mail-in ballots, and I can drive them to a ballot drop box. Like, that's That's the law in Illinois. If I was a nefarious person, I could go out and collect a bunch of Kamala Harris ballots and, oopsie, I accidentally got into a car accident and they fell into a puddle or a ditch, or I can't find them. They fell out of my car when I got into a car accident, or I had my window down and all of the mail-in ballots just flew out of my car, right? The people voting for Kamala Harris, right? I could pose as a Kamala Harris supporter and go around door to door and collect people's mail-in ballots and harvest them and then take them to a drop box or not take them to a drop box, right? So it breeds that law, being that that's legal here in the state of Illinois, it breeds for nefarious or bad actors to use the law to rig the election. Okay, so that happens. And they ask him some questions. Are you a member of the YouTube Partner Program? If so, how frequently does the YouTube demonetize your videos? All these questions. So they sent this almost exact same text to Tucker Carlson. So they're going to be censoring people ahead of the steal. So yeah, this is incredible. The October surprise. We're also going to get to Joe Rogan talking about the rub here with Kamala Harris's campaign and how she has strict demands for appearing on the Joe Rogan podcast. They offered Kamala to come on the podcast, but she wants to kind of demand that they don't do it at the studio there in Austin. And then they only do an hour, which traditionally I think it's like 3 hours, the Joe Rogan podcast. So smash that like button and share this out with your friends. Woo! The October surprise. Good morning. This is Conservative Cat. Now, the October surprise is here, and it's in a text message to Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson. They received this from a reporter at the New York Times. The reporter is doing a story, an article about the 286 YouTube videos between May and August that contain, quote, election misinformation. This is the text message that include narratives that have been debunked or are not supported by credible evidence. So they texted this to Ben Shapiro. They say, hey, we have a clip of you saying that your party rigged many of the voting rules. So the Democrat Party rigged many of the voting rules in advance of the election in order to ensure an extraordinary number of mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting. So in Illinois, we did recently pass a law to where ballot harvesting is legal. That means that I can go door to door collecting people's ballots and drop them off at a ballot drop box. That's ballot harvesting. And if the wind picks up and I have my window down and all the mail-in ballots just fly out of my car, I can't be held liable for that, right? So there's provisions within the law that protect you for things that happen, between the time you pick up all of the ballots and harvest the ballots to the time that you get to the drop box. So if bad actors wanted to, they could definitely go out there and collect all these ballots and never get them to the drop box, right? And Ben Shapiro talked about this, how, they changed the law prior to the election to ensure that there were plenty of mail-in ballots, an extraordinary number of mail-in ballots being collected through ballot harvesting and dropped off in these drop boxes. So they're doing an article. They sent the same exact text, pretty much the same exact text message to Tucker Carlson as well. This is the October surprise. They're going to be censoring people. They're going to be throttling people on YouTube who call out things that are going on at these polling locations across the nation. So people are going to be censoring you. People are going to come down hard on you as a blogger. The mainstream media will call you a blogger for calling out things that happen at polling locations that don't pass the sniff test. That's what I like to say. Things that happen that don't pass the sniff test to me. I do want to talk about Joe Rogan, talk about Kamala Harris not appearing on on his podcast. So this is what he said on X. Also, for the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing a podcast. They offered a date for this Tuesday. So I don't know. They probably didn't do it. I didn't see that they did it, but they offered a date for this Tuesday, but I would have to travel to her. And they only wanted to do an hour. So there were really strict demands that our campaign were, pushing for. And he said, quote, on X, I strongly feel that the best way to do it is in my studio in Austin. And my sincere wish is to just have a nice conversation to get to know her as a human being. And I really hope we can make that happen. 3 hours of Kamala Harris, that sounds like torture. Sounds like torture. So, she only wanted to do an hour, but Trump, of course, he says to Joe Rogan, I'll do whatever you want. And he goes to Austin, he goes to his studio, he does three full hours. Why? Because he has nothing to hide. Kamala Harris obviously has something to hide. Case in point, we've got Kamala and Gretchen Whitmer caught on a hot mic at their very weird, cringy beer scene at the bar where they're drinking beer together as gal pals. And, Kamala Harris is on the hot mic and she says, we need to move ground among men. We need to get men to come out and vote for me. We're having a hard time with men. And then she realizes that they're being recorded and she goes, oh, we have the microphones on and I guess they're listening to us. And she goes, shh. And then she goes, oh, shoot. And she didn't say shoot. She said the other word, but she didn't realize that the microphones were still on when the camera was in her face and the microphones were above her head. So, I mean, come on, what? So I don't think that she did the Rogan podcast because it looks like Rogan was trying to negotiate and she would not come to the studio and she would not do it for 3 hours. So, all right, folks, that's going to do it for us here on Conservative Cat. You guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. I love you.